Hi there, it's Ingrid here from Camera Shy and IngridKellyOwens.com. And today I wanted to do a quick video for you, just giving you an idea over your DSLR, how to use the menus and buttons and features and the dials, and giving you a quick introduction to a digital SLR for those of you who may have gotten a new camera for Christmas or for over the holidays and are just really stuck getting started. So let's get started. And obviously your DSLR is a digital single lens reflex camera that has a nice big lens at the front of it that makes it so much better for taking pictures than just your ordinary point and shoot camera or even your phone. Now, one of the things that gets people thrown off from the very beginning is that you have a lot of different things going on. And now this is a Canon 7D. If you have a Rebel, it will be very similar to this, only slightly smaller. Nikon are very similar too. And they all work on the same basis, but the buttons and things are in a different place. But one of the first things that you have got to set, no matter what DSLR you're using, is this dial here, which is called the mode dial. Now, the mode dial is going to dictate what is controlled by you and what is controlled by the camera. So you can see there, let me turn this around. You can see there that a lot of times you'll see this 7D has a particular green square for green auto, and then you have a creative auto function, and this is missing all of the commonly used scene functions that you see on entry-level DSLRs such as the Nikon 3300 and the Canon Rebel T6i. They all have little icons that denote whether you're going to be shooting in portrait mode, landscape mode, macro mode, all of those different settings. The 7D, as you can see, doesn't have those because I guess it's expected that if you're using a 7D, you're probably not going to be using those automatic functions. But if you are, if you set it to say the program auto, or excuse me, the portrait mode, it's going to set up your shot for best taking portraits. If you're going to do landscape mode, it's going to set up your photos so that the exposure is correct for landscape photography. Now, that is still an automatic mode in my mind. It's still going to only bring you so far when you're learning your camera. So when you really want to get control over the exposure, you have to be prepared to go into these modes here, which are called, this is called the creative zone. So on my camera I have P, which stands for program auto, TV, which stands for time variable, and it's for shutter priority mode. If you're using a Nikon or a Sony or a Panasonic camera, that will be denoted by an S for shutter priority. And then the next one is AV for aperture priority mode. Again, for Nikon or Sony or Panasonic shooters, that will be an A. And then you have M for full manual, and that's the same across the board. So those settings, or those modes, if you will determine how the exposure is calculated by your camera. It will decide, or it will tell you whether you're in control of the exposure like you are in full manual, the camera's in control of the whole exposure as it is in program, or maybe you're in control of half of the exposure settings. So for example, in shutter priority mode, you control the shutter speed and the camera sets the aperture to go with, and in aperture priority it's the opposite, or the flip-flop of that. So have a look at your camera manual and read first about this mode dial, and make sure you know which mode you're in before you start shooting, because that's going to determine what stuff you have access to on the back of the camera. Now, the thing to remember about most DSLRs is that everything, every mode and function that you can access here is pretty much put in there in triplicate. So sometimes you might even have that the option to change things in 4 different ways. If you have a touchscreen camera, you can certainly change things by touching the screen, by accessing the menu, by changing one of these buttons, or by accessing the quick menu. So just let me give you a quick idea of what I'm talking about. So the first way of changing some of these settings, and I'm talking about things like ISO and the white balance and what have you, the first way that you're going to do that, or that you can do that, is by going into the menu mode or the menu function. Now, menu, you would think that menu is the place that you hop in to get things straight away. That's the first place that you go to look if you wanted to change something. But in actuality, the menu is one of the last places that you need to go to look to change something. Things in the menu really are only going to be changed one time. So things like the date and time, the quality setting, the sounds, different way that you like your camera set up. So what I find with my students is they get into the menu, they get lost in there, and then they don't know, they just like turn it off and turn it on again to get themselves back. So really the menu, there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's not something that you need to worry about changing all the time. The next way that you can change things is by accessing one of these shortcut buttons here on the back. Now, depending on the type of camera you have, these buttons are going to vary dramatically, but most often you'll see a button specifically for the ISO, specifically for the flash, and the flash button is usually here on the side of the camera. You can see that pops up the flash. And sometimes with the Nikon cameras, they have some shortcut buttons down here along the front. So if you're looking to change a setting, such as like say the release mode to say access continuous shot mode, you might want to check here at the front of your camera. You might have a button up here, or you might have a button back here. I know the Rebels do have a lot of buttons here on the back of their jog dial here on the back of the camera. So that's the second way you can access things. The third way is by getting to play around with this quick action menu back in here. So if we press the Q button here, you can see that this highlights this menu here on the back, and we can move around these different, see there, I'm trying to do it in reverse and in the mirror, but that's for white balance, and we can hop around and go in and access any of the menus for any of these different things that we want to change by using a combination of, if you've got a jog dial here on the back or a control pad. Now that's for Canon, you've got a Q button. In Nikon, it's a little I button down here at the bottom, and that will highlight the menu on the back here and allow you to move around it. So that's the third way. And then the fourth way for a lot of people, like I said, is touchscreen. So you might also have to access that Q button or that I button on the back, and then you can touch the screen, and that will access any of those menus that you want to get into. So basically remember that when you're trying to change any functions on your camera, the functions that you have access to will be determined by what mode you're in right here. You can't see this on my camera now, but a good exercise is to turn your camera to the auto mode and see what options are grayed out here on the back of your camera, as compared with, say, shooting in the P, which is the program auto mode, which allows you to override a lot of different options. You can change things in the menu, but usually those are things that you change one time. You have access to shortcut buttons for the most commonly used things on the back of the camera, and sometimes here on the side of the camera at the front. And finally, of course, then we have the quick access menu here by usually either a Q or an I if you're using a Nikon camera, and that will allow you to hop around and change different things in the back of the menu here on the camera, on the LCD screen. So I hope that makes sense and that's clear for you. If you have any questions about anything to do with how to use your DSLR, I would love if you would shoot me an email to ingrid@camerashy.info, and maybe I'll do a video about it. And if you would, go ahead and sign up and subscribe to this video so that you make sure you get the next one straight into your inbox. And I will see you somewhere online. Take